Blackwood Cemetery was not a place you wanted to be. Not during the day, and definitely not at night. The iron gates were tall and black, twisted like angry snakes. They had sharp points on top, like teeth waiting to bite. A rusty sign hung from one of the gates. It read, Blackwood Cemetery, Est, 1825. The paint was peeling, letters bleeding rust. It was a warning to stay away. But some people don't listen. They think they are brave. They think they are smart. They are wrong. Tonight, the moon was just a sliver in the sky. A crooked, pale, sick smile. A thick fog rolled in from the swamp, swallowing everything. It crept between the old tombstones like crooked teeth. The fog was cold. It felt like a ghost's breath on your skin. A chilly wind howled through the branches of the dead trees. Long, bony fingers clawed at the sky. My name is Leo, and I was an idiot. My friends, Jake, Sarah, had dared me. They called me a chicken. You wouldn't last 5 minutes in Blackwood Cemetery after dark, Jake had sneered. Sarah had laughed. That's all it took. I had to prove them wrong. So I told them I would stay until midnight, just past midnight. Then I would come out and they would have to admit I was the brave one. The plan was simple. I would sneak in just before the caretaker locked the gates at 9. Then I would wait. I found a spot behind a big, mossy mausoleum. It was cold and damp, but it was a good hiding place. I watched the old caretaker, Mr. Abernathy, shuffle down the main path. He pulled them shut. Loud clang. I crept out from behind the mausoleum. The fog was so thick now I could barely see 10 feet in front of me. It swirled around my ankles like a cold, wet snake. Every tombstone looked like a shadowy figure waiting for me. I held my breath, trying to be as quiet as possible. My heart was pounding in my chest like a drum. I started walking toward the front gate, my feet crunching softly on the gravel path. That's when I heard it. A whisper. It was right behind me. So close. It felt like someone was breathing on my neck.
Leo!
I pulled my jacket tighter and told myself it was just the wind. Just the wind. Just the wind. Then, just after 11 o'clock, my phone died. Just darkness. A deep, thick darkness that felt heavy. Suddenly, the cemetery seemed a lot bigger. The only sounds were the wind and the far-off hoot of an owl. Or was it? Sometimes, if you listened very, very closely, you could hear other things. You might hear a faint scratching sound, like fingernails on a coffin lid. The graves were old. The people inside were long gone, weren't they? The cemetery kept its secrets buried deep. Every tombstone told a story. Some were tall and grand, with stone angels watching over them. Their faces were smooth, but their eyes seemed to follow you. They looked sad. Or were they angry? Other stones were small and broken, half sunk into the damp earth. The names were worn away by years of rain and wind. You couldn't even tell who was buried there anymore. They were forgotten. But maybe being forgotten was the worst thing of all. Because the forgotten ones, they don't want to stay forgotten once. They don't want to stay forgotten once they've forgotten. They want you to remember. Chapter. Trapped. My name is Leo, and I was an idiot. But the cemetery was listening. I scrambled to my feet, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the fog, the shape resolved itself. It wasn't human, something ancient and wrong. I didn't wait to see what it would do. I just ran. I ran blindly through the fog away from the path. Branches whipped at my face, scratching my skin. I tripped over gravestones I couldn't see, scraping my knees. My hand brushed against a weeping angel statue. For a horrifying second, I thought I saw its stone fingers twitch in the gloom. The whispers followed me, getting louder and more frantic. They weren't just words anymore. They were my name, twisting into agonized cries. It felt like the whole graveyard was screaming at me. I finally saw the main gate through a break in the fog. Relief washed over me for a second, a fragile hope. I sprinted toward it, my lungs burning. The tall iron bars were cold and slick with moisture. I grabbed them, my fingers searching for a foothold. The twisted iron snakes seemed to writhe and squirm. The gate was growing taller. The shadows cast by the bars danced on the ground. They twisted into horrible shapes. They were dark, inky patches on the ground, rising up. They peeled off the dirt like black tar, forming into small, hunched figures. They had no faces, just empty holes where eyes should be. A low, dragging sound began as they shuffled toward the gate, their movements jerky and unnatural. Just as the angel's fingers were about to brush against my shoulder, a low rumble started deep within the earth. It was a faint tremor at first, but it grew quickly. The ground beneath my feet began to shake, not like an earthquake, more like something enormous moving just beneath the surface. The head of the stone angel snapped back into its original position, face buried in its hands. The shaking grew more violent. I lost my balance and fell to my knees. Tombstones around me rattled. A tall marble obelisk snapped at its base and came crashing down, shattering. The ground wasn't just shaking, it was heaving. The dirt in front of the nearest grave split open. A dry, bony hand shot out. Another hand broke through next to it. And another. All around me the earth was breaking apart. The residents of Blackwood Cemetery were waking. They were not happy. The low rumble swelled into a symphony of groans. The air filled with damp earth and something old and rotten. Some were only skeletons, bones clicking. Others had leathery skin drawn tight. They were rising. All of them. They were coming for me. They were everywhere. The air grew thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. An army of the dead climbing out of the ground. Their movements were stiff, unnatural, a silent spectacle in the mist. They didn't seem to notice me at first. They just stood there, swaying slightly, as if confused. It was as if they were listening to a song only they could hear. Their empty sockets seemed to scan the foggy landscape. I knew I had to move. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum in the suffocating silence. I crawled away on my hands and knees, trying to stay low. Every snap of a twig under my hand sounded like a gunshot. As I scrambled through the rows of the dead, a strange light caught my eye. It was coming from the center of the cemetery. An ornate mausoleum, grand and out of place, built from pristine white marble that seemed to repel the grime of the ages. A soft green light glowed from within the ages. A soft green light glowed from within, pulsing like a diseased heart. The risen dead seemed drawn to it, their vacant stares now fixed on the source of the glow. They started to shuffle slowly, clumsily toward the glowing tomb, a silent pilgrimage of the damned. It was my only chance. While they were distracted, I could make a run for the back wall of the cemetery. I started running, weaving between the shambling figures. One of them turned its head as I passed. A low, guttural moan escaped its lipless mouth. It raised a bony arm, its fingers pointing right at me. Suddenly, all the other heads snapped in my direction. The spell was broken. They had seen me. The groans turned into shrieks. The slow shuffle became a jerky, stumbling run, their limbs moving with a horrifying, unnatural speed. They were coming for me. I didn't stop to see what was emerging from the tomb, but I heard it, a dry, scraping sound like bone on stone. I didn't dare look back. All I cared about was the wall. It was my only way out. My fingers, slick with fear, searched for purchase on the rough stone. I could make it. I had to. I heaved myself over the top, gasping. I was free. Landed hard in wet grass, the impact jarring my bones. A faint shriek from behind the wall spurred me on. I didn't look back, just ran through the woods. Branches snagged my clothes like grasping fingers. Snagged my clothes like grasping fingers, thorns tearing my skin. I burst onto a familiar road. Streetlights, houses with lights on them. It felt like a different world. I didn't stop until I locked my bedroom door behind me, heart hammering against my ribs. Next morning, I told Jake. I told Sarah. They didn't believe me. They laughed. I showed the scratches on my arms. I showed the mud on my jeans. They just shook their heads, smiling that infuriating, sympathetic smile. "You're a good storyteller, Leo," Sarah said, patting my shoulder. I swore I would never go near Blackwood Cemetery again. But it seemed Blackwood wasn't finished with me. It started subtly, at night. Whispers on the wind outside my window, almost sounding like my name. Shadows moved in my room with nothing to cast them. The air grew heavy with the scent of damp earth. A book fell from my shelf with a loud thud. No draft, no vibration. It just fell. But last night, something happened that froze the blood in my veins. Staring into my window, I saw it for a second, hovering behind my reflection. Another face, pale and thin, with empty black sockets that seemed to pull all the light from the room. Then a sudden biting cold washed over me, like graveyard dirt. Frost spiderwebbed across the glass. I know something followed me home, something from that desecrated ground in Blackwood Cemetery. And as I listened to the floorboards creak in the hallway outside my locked door, I realized the truth. You can't ever really leave.